And welcome to another edition of Democratically Speaking. I'm your host, Steve Foote, and I'm also the chairman of the Brockton Democratic City Committee. We have a different kind of guest today for you. He's a local activist. He's the host of his own television show here on Brockton Community Access. It's called An Outside View. And he's also, his name is Dick Zaccaro. I'm sure a lot of you know him from his own show. Dick, a pleasure to have you in. Let me run down a little bit more about you, though. You're the chairman of the Plymouth County Charter Commission. I serve on that as well.
Treasurer, actually, the treasurer.
The treasurer, excuse me. I was trying to give you a promotion right there.
Yeah.
And you're also a member of the Brockton Democratic City Committee, which sponsors this program, so that's a good thing there. Now, Chris McMillan is running for mayor. He's the Ward 7 councilor. Rumor has it, well, we know the seat's going to be open. Rumor has it you might know somebody that might be a candidate for that job.
Absolutely, Steve. First of all, I want to thank you for having me on the show. It's a pleasure being here, and it's also a pleasure being in this seat for a change. Usually I'm sitting where you are, interviewing guests on my show. But that's correct. I'm seriously considering a bid for Ward 7. I'll probably have an announcement coming out within the next day or two. I figured that I've been a long-standing Democrat in Brockton, a member of the Democratic Committee, as you pointed out. I volunteered over the years on many different mayor's committees. I'm still to this day chairman of the Mayor's Trust Fund Commission as well as the Mayor's Cable Advisory Board. So now there is an open seat with Chris McMillan, Councilor McMillan, running for mayor. And if I was ever going to run, now would be the opportunity.
Now you're also involved with the group Citizens for Limited Taxation. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, the name of the organization actually is Brocktonians for Limited Taxation and Concerned Citizens for Change. Myself, along with several other members, founded this group, and basically the premises for us starting this organization was to protest the high taxes, both commercial and residential, in our city. And just for the viewers to know that Brockton has about the 13th highest commercial tax rate, $31.96 per thousand, and also one of the highest residential tax rates, almost $17 per thousand. And we're looking at what kind of services we're getting in return for that money that we're spending. We're taking a look at our infrastructure, our roads, some of the other services that the city provides, some of the nepotism that exists in the city with no minimum qualifications for department heads. And we're looking at some of the deals that the city made, investment choices, such as the D-cell plant, where we're spending $6 million a year and we're not getting anything returned, not a gallon of water. And the Stonehill College sewer contract, where they have been allowed for years to operate under a residential meter per building as opposed to a bulk rate that's shortchanging the citizens, residents, and taxpayers of our city by as much as $2 million, and nothing is being done about it.
Now, the name of your show is An Outside View for a reason.
Right.
Now, even though you have a lot of government experience here, these are all volunteer, non-paid positions, right?
Correct.
And so you're going to bring, to coin the phrase, an outside view into the city council, which I think is desperately needed. Your prospective opponent would be Ward 7 school committee member Tim Sullivan, who's, well, I guess he's the head of one of the heads of the Brockton Housing Authority, and a BAT bus driver here, and served on the school committee for about 4 years. So he kind of got an inside pedigree.
Yeah, I don't know the gentleman personally. I know of him, so I can't really comment on his background other than what you just pointed, that he's been an insider. He's worked for the BAT bus for how many years, and also on the Brockton Housing Authority. But the thing that disturbs me is he's come out already and said that he's a tax crusader against high taxes. And by the way, that's what our country was based and formed upon, was a tax revolution against the mother country in England. So we're out there trying to get the most bang for the buck for our people and residents and make sure we're getting proper services. So for him to say he's a tax crusader and not show up at our meetings, if you recall, back in January, we protested on the new tax increase. There were over 200 concerned residents that joined us, and he was nowhere to be found. And also, I'd like to take a look, even though the council has nothing to do with the school committee budget. I mean, one of the mayor's former aides got a new job there, making pretty good money, and also a little pat on the back for about $20,000 when he exited, and Mr. Sullivan's a school committee member. I'd like to know what his thoughts on that are.
Yeah, in your literature, you bring up a lot of things that have been bugging the people on the street for a long time. The nepotism. I mean,
Right.
For those who don't know what it is, it's when members of the same family are all intertwined in these city jobs, and they're working for each other, and a lot of them aren't working directly for their relatives, but it's a culture down there. It's almost like being back in high school. The cool kids running the high school, well, the cool kids just think they're running the city now, and so you got 3,000 or so city employees, and if you go through the whole roster of them, you find out like 2,500 of them are interconnected in some way, you know? So, what type of thing would you like to see happen with that?
Well, I think you'll always have a certain degree of nepotism. That's the way of life, obviously. And I really don't have a big problem with that, is not so much as long as the person's qualified. But what really disturbs me is when the council unanimously, I shouldn't say unanimously, there was one councilor absent when the vote came down. They voted 9-1 against minimum qualifications for department heads. To me, that's absurd. I mean, I use the analogy, if I'm going to go in for brain surgery, I want to make sure my brain surgeon has the minimum qualifications. I'll see you later, doc. I'm going next door. And that is really troubling to me. Some of these department heads are running multi-million-dollar budgets. The total city budget's about $350 million. And to have someone with required no minimum qualifications is just not right. Now, whether they did that to promote nepotism and get some of their relatives in that do not have the proper credentials, I don't know. But it's something that we should definitely look in, and we should definitely have a policy against that. You should disclose if you have an immediate relative on the city council or mayor. Or a school committee member, for that matter.
Yeah, because there's a lot of it going on, and for the life of me, I can't see how a department head. We have one that I can think of right off the top of my head, and I believe Councilor Stewart voted against it, or brought it up and was vehemently knocked down by his fellow councilors. That, I mean, she's running one of the top departments, negotiating contracts worth millions of dollars, and she doesn't even have an associate's degree from college.
Right.
So I mean, it's just,
Right.
there
Well,
are certain...
there should be safeguards in place for that, and we need full transparency in this city, including who's related to who, what qualifications they have, and also all city finances should be available online or in hard copy for the residents and taxpayers who pay these people's salaries.
And let's talk a minute about residency. Voted on 2-1 by the taxpayers.
Right.
The taxpayers have said in many other elections, even if it wasn't on the ballot, that they vehemently want residency. And I know a lot of the employee unions don't want residency, but the problem with the residency is every time a high-profile job comes up, they waive the residency.
Right.
The police chief is not a Brockton resident.
Correct.
The head of the park department, although I guess he has since moved to Brockton,
Right.
he wasn't a Brockton resident for a long time. The mayor's new chief of staff, he's renting a room from somebody here, but there's debate over whether he actually lives here.
Right.
The former superintendent, Matthew Malone, it was a big,
Right.
that was a big deal about whether he actually lived here or not.
That's a great point you bring up. Getting back to Superintendent Malone, who I thought was a very qualified individual, he had a vote of no confidence by the majority of the school committee. Now, here's the guy that was, I believe, was living in an apartment in Brockton, so he met the residency requirement, and they get rid of him, and where does he end up? The educational czar making twice the money under Governor Deval Patrick.
Running the whole state.
So I guess it depends on who you know, who you don't know, as the old saying goes, but it should be either all or nothing. I believe the residency requirement under mere units, if I'm correct, was waived after 7 years of working for public safety officers. The teachers are exempt; they're part of the state retirement system, teachers' retirement system, and you have a vast pool of people to draw for teachers. I can see that, but When you require all department heads to be residents and you arbitrarily waive it, I don't care how qualified that candidate is, not right. You're not following what people voted on.
Well, I mean, these guys know, these people know that when they take the job, that's part of the requirement.
Right.
If it's the same thing as if you apply for a job and it says you need a master's degree and you go up and say, well, I don't have a master's degree, but I still want the job. Well, guess what? You don't get the job.
Right.
Or you have enough sense to say to yourself, well, boy, I'd really like that job, but I don't have a master's, so I can't do it. But they just know they can get away with it. They know they can get around it, so they don't even.
Yeah, I'm a believer in it, and I don't believe you should make any exceptions. And in defense of those people that don't want to move to Brockton, maybe they're trying to evade those high taxes that we all pay here.
Well, maybe, but you can't tell me in a city of 100,000 people we can't find a dozen department heads that live in Brockton.
I'm sure we can, if we do a so-called nationwide search.
Yeah, maybe.
I'm sure we could find many qualified people from the city.
Let's talk about conflicts of interest. We've had the city solicitor's been under fire for having a conflict of interest with Stonehill College and the big snafu about the water rates.
Right.
Want to get into that a little bit?
Absolutely, I'd love to. I definitely feel it's a conflict of interest for anyone that's associated with that college to review their contract, particularly if his legal background is not a contractual attorney. It's my understanding he's a real estate attorney. He may be a good city solicitor, but he has no right to independently review that contract if he's chairman of the president of Stonehill College fundraising committee. That's a huge conflict of interest that ethics should be looking into.
Yeah, yeah. So, you know,
I mean, don't forget, it's costing the taxpayers $2 million.
yeah.
We'd love to see our taxes low. When we went up last January, because we went up there 200 strong, we got the city council or the chief financial officer to find an additional $1 million so they wouldn't have to go up the full 2.5% of the tax factor. They only went 1.5%. We asked the councilors to have no confidence in that tax factor, reject it, and go back to the mayor and have the mayor and the CFO find the additional $1 million so our taxes would not go up. They're high enough already, and it's questionable what kind of services we're getting in return.
And you bring up that meeting, and it's interesting at that meeting that the Metro South Chamber of Commerce guys were there with Chris Cooney, who's not a Brockton resident,
Right.
leading the way. And right before I spoke, Attorney Susskind spoke as a Brockton resident, I guess, and a Brockton businessman. And you know, I don't know him personally, but I obviously know who he is. And he was saying that this isn't the businesses regarding the tax levy. This isn't the businesses against the homeowners. And he said it's not fair to put it that way. And so then he got done speaking. I got up there and I said, you know, that might be a nice thing to say, but the fact is it's exactly that. It's the business. If the businesses pay less, the homeowners pay more.
Right.
And it's got to be tilted towards the tax-paying homeowner because businesses have other alternatives to raise money. Most of the people up in my neighborhood, and I know a lot of people in your neighborhood, are senior citizens, been living in the homes for years. They're living on Social Security or small pensions. They don't have any way to make any more money. Businesses can apply for TIFs, apply for different grants and bank loans and whatever. There's plenty of ways for businesses to come up with additional revenue. It's the taxpayers that the elected officials should be remembering, and not so much the businesses. That's my opinion.
You bring up a great point, and a lot of those senior citizens, my mother and my aunt that live up Fairway Oaks, they're on limited incomes, and it was mind-boggling to me and incomprehensible how in one of the worst global recessions, they actually went up on their property evaluations. They lowered the tax rate about 2 years ago, but they went up on the property valuations. And that market, it's ridiculous. And it's a big problem, and infrastructure's failing, and I'd like to know where the money's going. It's not going up to fix up our streets, I'll tell you that.
And I noticed that one of the other things that the council voted to approve, and I had Council President Cruz, Tim Cruz was in here telling us that they don't negotiate contracts, which is true, but they do approve the financing of the contract.
Correct.
They voted to recommend favorably, or they might have even completely approved it by now. These 3-year settling for the contracts for the past 3 years for a lot of the city unions, and with signing bonuses. Okay, well, you can make the argument that the signing bonus is in lieu of a raise, and okay, let's just let that slide for a minute. But, you know, the fact is that the council does have some say over these things.
Absolutely.
And they try to defer to the mayor and then blame it on the mayor, and
Right.
it just...
And we did, I commend them for saving $25 or $28 million on those health insurance negotiations. But my question, where's the money going? Is it going back into contractual agreements for the union, or are the taxpayers getting a refund? There's something wrong with the picture when you have the average person in the city of Brockton combined family income of about $46,000, okay? We have one of the highest foreclosure rates in the entire state, and we have one of the highest residential and commercial tax rates in the entire state. Meanwhile, we're in one of the worst global recessions that I can ever recall, and I've been in the financial industry for over 30 years. And I mean, we haven't made any budget cuts for I don't know in how many years. I mean, we have 200 and I believe 76 employees making well over $100,000 a year, and we have another 100 employees making at least $75,000 a year with excellent benefits. And I mean, at least try to cut some budget, streamline. I'm not an advocate for people getting laid off, but I mean, cut back on some of the overtime and manage the budget a little more fiscally conservatively. I mean, the average person, I'll never forget the woman that got up there the night of our protest in January, and she said, I can't believe these salaries. Some of these people are making $200,000, $250,000 a year. It takes me 10 years to make that money. And where's the money going? We have potholes all over the city in our streets. Where's the money going? Well, it's going to $6 million a year to pay for no water with the D-Cell contract for a 22-year contract. We're letting Stonehill College get away with $2 million. And I mean, there's a lot of money right there left on the table. The Brockton Rocks, that's another. It's a losing entity. We should not be in the baseball business. We should not be in the conference center business. We should not be taking over foreclosed homes by eminent domain. We're not in the mortgage business, the real estate business. We are providing a service to the public to serve and protect the public and manage the city. These are losing entities due to special interest groups. It's not benefiting the majority of residents and taxpayers in this city, and it has to stop. And no one will look into these contracts. Everything is ironclad. I've been in the investment business for 30 years again. I've negotiated billion-dollar contracts, and there is no such thing as an ironclad contract. There's always an out clause for both parties, subject to a 30 days negotiation, and if it's gross negligence and not performance of duties, there's your out right there. I went up in front of the Water Commission and pleaded with them. Ask for 1 gallon of water. Ask for as much as you want, and if they can't produce, there's your out clause right there. It falls on deaf ears, and the people are getting tired of that representation that we have in our city government.
There's a lot of thought out there that the reason that the desal plant is not questioned more strenuously is that the council knows that the power plant is probably going to win the litigation and open eventually, and that they'll sell that water to the power plant.
Right.
I think the reason that the desal thing went in the first place was because they anticipated the power plant would open.
Absolutely.
But they didn't realize the backlash they were going to get from the public on the power
Right.
plant.
It was more than a coincidence that power plant requires 2.5 to 3 million gallons of water a day, and that's exactly what that plant came to produce, which hasn't happened yet.
And even though I believe Councilor DiNapoli's, he's trying to get, maybe it wasn't him, but some of them are trying to get, they were talking about bringing the Aquaria guys in, and I think the reason they gave that up was because I think the Aquaria guys are going to tell them, look, you told us, you don't blame us for not selling the water because we're holding
Right.
it for your power plant,
Right.
which is that's going to blow up in their face and they don't want to hear it.
The other thing that really troubles me is when you jump the gun and put 680 liens on people's homes that are struggling to make their mortgage payments due to faulty water meter readings. And we knew this problem happened years ago, that the water meters were faulty. They hired an independent consultant to come in, Dressler, Camp, and McGee, review the water meters. They came out and said, you have to replace these meters. We had a $5 million surplus in the water budget that year, as we do in the sewer budget every year. And that money was invested as opposed to fixing the water meters that were prevented these problems. And now people are going to court over it. They're going to the state appellate tax board appealing it. I mean, you don't have to be a rocket scientist when someone gets a $100,000 bill. You know something's remiss with that.
You're talking about a treasurer collector's department run ironically by Councilor Brophy's brother, Martin Brophy, who doesn't pick up on the fact that a residential water bill at $100,000 is something wrong. It's not, the resident is not using that water. There's something wrong. He doesn't pick up on that. He sends out a whole slew of bills to every water user in the city with a decimal point that's off by one. It gives everybody an extra, percentage of acreage.
Right.
Nobody in his office picks up on that mistake either. I mean, that
Right.
didn't get red flagged by somebody. I know all these guys downtown, most of them have been working there for 15, 20 years. Nobody picked up on that?
Yeah, when I received my bill around the first of the year, I thought the city would give me a Christmas gift. And we live up by Fields Park, and all of a sudden I had 3 acres of land. I said, maybe they gave me some of the park.
Yeah, I went from an acre, and I went from
Right.
a half an acre to 5 acres, so
Right,
I thought it was pretty
but
good.
it's issues like this, I think, that have the citizens up in arms, and they want some better representation. And there's so much more the city can do. I mean, we have to lower taxes, not increase them, both for residents and businesses, encourage people to move in the city, encourage businesses to come in, get some tax incentives, employ people. That's how you grow your infrastructure.
I mean, they just had a council meeting the other day, and this Evans machine wants to come in. They're going to give, they want, I don't know how many millions of dollars in tax breaks, and they're going to provide 10 jobs, and there's no guarantee they're even going to go to Brockton residents.
Right.
I mean, Jesus, it's bad enough. First off, I think the TIFs, they get too much for what they give anyway.
Right.
But even beyond that,
Right.
if you're going to give us 10 jobs, just what's the harm in saying, yes, we will find 10 people out of 100,000 people
Right.
that can do this job that live in Brockton?
Right. Another example, I mean, W.B. Mason is a great company, and they're in Brockton, but I believe they got a, I don't know, 10 or 15-year TIF. And for the people out there, what this tax incentive is, it holds the value of that business property stable for either 5, 10, 15 years, so the taxes won't be increased unless the rates go up per 1,000. But, I mean, you don't lay people off after the city gives you a kiss like that.
You know,
You
and
should be
now,
bringing more people in the city.
and now we have Mary Waldron leaves the 21st Century Corp after I don't know how many years. She's
Right.
making about $85,000 a year. She leaves, and not only are they now they're saying they're going to bring in a city planner. Councilor Brophy was quoted in the paper as saying that they would have to make at least what she was making.
Right.
So does that mean they're going to? And he also said they would have to relax residency to get that candidate.
Right.
So they're going to say the heck with residency. They're going to add an $85,000 or better a year salary, and I guess they're going to replace Mary Waldron at $85,000 also.
Right.
They throw these thousands of dollars around like it's nothing.
Well, you
know?
bring up a good point. That 21st Century Corporation was created supposedly to facilitate business coming to the city, but it also got involved with some finances of the rocks. So the city would give the 21st Century Corporation hotel tax money that was earmarked to fix up the downtown area. Instead, it was funneled into the rocks to keep them going, who were struggling, and pay their water bills. I mean, I'd love the city to send me a check to pay my water bills and sewer bills, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and then the Rocks were also forgiven of a big debt that was, they said, well, we didn't forgive it, we threw it on the end of the 20-year note. But, hey, you think the Rocks, when the Rocks get to that year, when they have to
Right.
pay that note, you think, guess what's going to happen? No more Rocks.
well,
And the Rocks wouldn't be in
They're
business
pretty much
now.
gone now. We have
Well,
a
the only
college
reason they're there
team
now is
in there.
because we're subsidizing them as
Right.
taxpayers.
Well, we shouldn't be in these businesses. Again, the purpose of government is to protect and serve the public, not to be in the baseball business. I mean, that's totally absurd. You're overstepping your boundaries, and you're taking on an enterprise that we know nothing about. You need professionals to run that business. And I think we should pursue a regionalized form of government. You're a fellow charter commissioner with me, and we meet with different officials all over the county. There are 27 communities. Brockton's the only city. And there's so much services we could piggyback off of. Our water resources here, sewer resources, as long as they're paying their fair share. They could do our excise tax bill. We could join a universal health care program. There's strength in numbers. You get a volume discount. City had a chance to go with the GIC, the state insurance contracts, to save millions and millions of dollars. But we have to work together, and we have to work with our state legislators and get as much aid as we can. But we have to streamline city government. We have to make sure that the taxpayers are getting the most bang for their buck on the high tax dollars, and we're getting something in return.
Yeah, and the property tax has gone through the roof in the last, say, 10 years.
Yeah, but people can't sustain that tax anymore. They're killing the city. Businesses are moving out. Look at Brockton Ice and Coal was here for years, ever since I was a kid. We had a big party at a house. I'd drive down, get about 3-4 blocks of ice. They're gone. Comcast used to have all their service vehicles right across the street from this studio they were sitting in. They left the city and went to Taunton. I mean, it's almost $32 per 1,000. And what really gets me is what you brought up. We have these people that do not even live in our city dictating what should go on and what the tax rates and who should be getting taxed, including our CFO, who's not a resident of Brockton. So at least they should live here and bear some of the burden. Maybe if they lived in this city, they'd think differently about jacking up the tax rate every time you turn around. And we have a healthy surplus of cash on our books. We have a AAA credit rating. I mean, I give credit for the CFO for doing that, but how did he get it? Through us. We're financing that.
Well, an interesting part of that, too, is that on these contracts that were just finalized,
Right.
every one of those contracts said, with the CEO signed off on those, the CFO signed off on those with the stipulation
Right.
that the property tax goes the full 2.5%, and we haven't been going to the full 2.5%.
We'll address that in June. But I just want to say, as we're wrapping up real quickly, we need total transparency, accountability. We need to follow the Department of Revenue's recommendations that we hire an assistant CFO in case Mr. Condon up and leaves tomorrow. They'll be at a loss. We need to go out and do a new auditor search. We've had the same auditor for the last 25 years. People get complacent. That's the way it is. You need some fresh blood. And we need to study the impact of the residency requirement. I mean, I think that's costing the city a lot of money.
You know, I mean, residency, I mean, either you have residency or you don't. I don't see it as right. We're going to have residency, but if we really like the guy and he's a friend of ours, we're going to let it go. And
well, you can't have double standards, and I think we all want a better government. Not only city, state, federal, we want a better government and a safe government. And my hat goes out to those families with those tragedies at the Boston Marathon. I hope they get the perpetrator of that and they punish them, set an example, and we need safer streets, and we need to provide our public safety officials with state-of-the-art systems to ensure they provide us with the best programs available.
Well, I'm glad that you decided to get involved in this race and bring some of this stuff to light, because, you know, a lot of it people don't understand, and the incumbents will always tell you that there's nothing to worry about, nothing to see here, folks, move along, you know, and it's just business as usual down there, and the change needs to be made. You need new people, or if you keep re-electing the same people, you're going to keep getting the same results.
Well, if I am elected, I will assure that I will be a voice for the people. And there's an old political adage, a vote for me is a vote for them. That's good. And our guest today has been Dick Zaccaro, local activist, host of An Outside View, and I guess now a candidate for the Ward 7 City Council seat. Dick, it's a pleasure having you on. You're a good friend of mine. I'm glad to have you. And please watch future editions of Democratically Speaking. Thank you very much.